So I want to talk about the idea of being unapologetically wealthy. I think it's kind of become a little bit of a dirty word to be wealthy in recent times, and there's a lot of politics of envy at play, and a lot of people saying, well, shouldn't you devote your time and energy to the greater good? And I would kind of agree with that entrepreneurs have these incredible imaginations, they're incredible creative problem solvers. And the first problem they're normally faced with is how do they become financially free themselves? So they apply a lot of attention to that process of becoming financially free. And I think people look at that potentially as being sort of selfish or greedy. But ultimately, you can't help the poor by being one of them. You have to create wealth for yourself first before you can go on and help others. It's like the old aeroplane decompression thing. You've got to put the mask on yourself before you help other people. And I think that if entrepreneurs are empowered with wealth, they can use those creative sort of problem solving skills that they've got with the money that they've created to go on and solve much bigger, much more interesting problems. And we do see that with the super wealthy. We do see, Larry Ellison doing more for cancer research than probably all the cancer research charities put together. You see things like the Giving Pledge from Bill Gates and all of those other billionaires who got together, Warren Buffett and everybody who got together to put 600 billion into the Giving Pledge to solve some of the world's greatest problems. So I think actually the challenge is not about entrepreneurs and the concentration of wealth that happens with those entrepreneurs. I actually think that there's not enough entrepreneurs who become wealthy. I think far too often, the private equity guys, the VC guys, the bankers and everybody make more money out of an entrepreneur's success than the entrepreneur does. And ultimately the entrepreneurs are kind of kept poor. They're like the starving artists of the modern world. And I think if we can create an environment where you meritocratically link wealth to the energies that you put in, and so that the entrepreneur makes the money from their activities and rather than the bankers and the finance people making the money from their activities, then I think we would have a massive impact on global societies everywhere, because you'd suddenly have these wealthy entrepreneurs who could go out and change the things that have really affected them in their lives. They would also be an incredible example to people in their own local communities, where people could look and say, hey, he was just an ordinary guy from the same street that I'm from. I could do that too. I think that's a hugely powerful thing to be able to do. But I think that, global capital has got a bit detached from value creation. So value creation is, creating a business, solving problems, getting paid for solving problems. And global financial markets are more interested in, the risk and the risk profile and the liquidity of investments. So what's happened is these derivative products have been created, and it's kind of created a parallel economy. So there's an economy over here which has all the money in it, and there's an economy over here which has all of the value creation, the small to medium sized businesses. Just to give you one example of how that pans out, if you take a mature economy like the US or the UK, 50% of GDP comes from the activities of small to medium sized businesses. So half of the economy's activity are small businesses. Then when you look at employment, it's over 90% of the private sector workers are in those small to medium sized businesses. So they're incredibly systemic to those economies. Now, if you look at the top 500 asset managers in the world, so this is where all the money is, the top 500 asset managers, and they're looking after money for, charities, institutions, religions, all sorts of different, sovereign wealth funds, all sorts of things. The top 500 asset managers control $93 trillion. So to put that into perspective, the UK economy is about $2 trillion. So $93 trillion, more than 45 times the size of the UK economy, is held in those 500 top asset managers. And of that $93 trillion, $0 goes into those small to medium sized businesses that employ 90% of the workforce and generate half of the economy. In fact, they pride themselves on their diversification, and they're diversified into all sorts of asset classes, real estate, stocks, bonds, metals, gold and silver, and even cryptocurrencies. There's an allocation to Bitcoin in there. but not an allocation to small to medium-sized business. The closest they get is venture capital, which goes into those crazy Silicon Valley, massively funded startups, but that's not small to medium-sized businesses that are the engine of the economy. So I think if we can reattach global capital to small business, then we parachute trillions of dollars just from a diversification perspective, trillions of dollars back into real businesses, real communities, and the real economy. So I think that's the solution to democratizing wealth, is to make those small businesses an investable asset class for those big global asset managers.